And then we're good to go. Alright, ready?
I'm ready.
What is up, all you beautiful people? It is I, Academy TCG, back here with another episode of the Yugi panel. Today we have a special guest with us. He is a OTS Tournament store winner and actually one of my buddies from, oh man, we go way back for for Yu-Gi-Oh! And Patrick C. He's here.
Hey guys, what's up?
And what deck are you going to be showing us today? Showcasing with us?
So I'm going to be showcasing the Unchained, the pure Unchained deck that I used at the OTS and what I'm currently playing now.
Alright, perfect. So, just before we really get into this, why Unchained? Why not any other deck? Why not like a meta deck or anything like that? What draws
So,
you into it?
so TLDR, I'm really old. I'm like 28 years old, and I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, like a good 10 plus years at least. And one of the decks that I really enjoyed, like during the early days, was during the synchro format, Scraps. And what Scraps utilized in their little strategy comprised of was destruction and simplifying the game state. It was more of a mid-range control aspect in terms for a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. So when Unchained came out, not only is the art gorgeous, but the concept was very similar with a little more straightforward direction, which I liked. Because Scraps, even though back in the day was, I'm sorry, was, it had a win con. You knew how to play it. It had a very diverse and unique strategy, and it was kind of all over the place. A lot of the cards were not really used, even though we had so much support from the get-go. It was a very straightforward, use 2 or 3 cards: Scrap Chimera, Scrap Beast, Scrap Goblin, Scrap Yard, Scrap Storm, and then the synchros. You still had cards like Scrap Searcher, Scrap Hunter. Scrap Golem was barely used. It was like a 1 or 2 of, and then all the other cards like Shark and Kong were just never touched because they didn't really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And not until this field spell came out a couple years after, where some of the more cards, even Orthros, which was a promo, came out a little time after. It wasn't really touched upon using the other cards. There was still like Mind Reader too, and Worm. There's like a ton of them. They're all different types. They're kind of all over the place. And the only unique part about the deck that stayed the same was that they all kind of destroyed themselves, and you'd get their effects, or they would recur back to your hand or field.
Mm-hmm.
Unchained's kind of take control of that perspective of destruction. No matter what, destruction, you're getting cards from the deck. Destruction, you're floating, you're getting cards back from the graveyard. It has a very similar concept in it, and like I said, not only was the art amazing, but the concept was more nostalgic, and it really kept me wanting to play the deck because it was a similar strategy that I always loved in Yu-Gi-Oh, which was 1-for-1s, simplifying the game state, and a mid-range control aspect.
So, would you say this is more of like a modern version of Scraps?
Exactly. That's what I like to look at it as.
Alright.
And I don't even think of it as like a good dark deck, because the twins are just literally fire and they're fiends. They don't share an attribute except the fact that your good fiends in the deck can get super polyed, because as I get super polyed throughout a tournament, I'm realizing half my deck is dark, even though the other half isn't dark. And most dark decks are generically good, but this deck is just kind of it's good because the factor of just simple destruction and recurring advantage through simple destruction is something that people don't see as powerful until the game plays out. It's not a combo. It's not meant for combo heavy. It's meant for, like I said earlier, simplifying the game state, or just 1-for-1 advantage, or being able to lose a card and regain an advantage through losing cards. And it's something that a lot of people don't really see or understand until they face it. And I think that's one of the the things that are keeping Unchained from being in the meta is the fact that people don't really play it because they don't see the boards they can create. They kind of just see the deck as, oh, they just destroy and they try to take my link monster, but they don't really understand, the simplifying game state aspect. So it's kind of an under the radar deck, but the more I play it, the more I realize it's really consistent. And I feel like if more people did pick up the deck could be, a good tier contender.
Right, because right now it's like on some people's list, it's not even on the radar. It's not even Rogue.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you look at decks, like a lot of decks in a lot of meta decks that people like playing as combo oriented. Like, oh, look at Eldritch and look at Adamantia that just came out. Everybody likes playing them. Everyone's picking them up because they create huge boards. And yes, even Eldritch can create huge boards. Because Eldritch, the card itself, is a great just advantage. It just gains advantage, right. And it's just a huge beat stick. It does so much just by itself. And Adamancipator is just a ridiculous combo deck by itself. And I understand why people, that's threatening. Like when you see boards like that, that's threatening, and people jump on those kind of decks. Decks like this that have, like I said, a mid-range. I'm using Magic terms because that's the best way to portray it, because we don't really have a term for that. We're simplifying the game state. I am trying to control the board while maintaining advantage. You create a board, I'm trying to slowly dismantle that board, or I'm trying to even out the board. It's how the game works. It's how this game works. It's just disruption.
Right.
And that's what they capitalize on, is disruption and float. And, a lot of people don't really take it seriously until it's, they're realizing they're running into problems. It's like, oh, well, he took my monster that I was trying to use for a combo. Okay. Mm-hmm. Or I 1-for-1 blew up his cards, torrential his backfield, and I start getting more monsters, and I get Abominable back and start blowing up his other monster. Or it's my turn, and I start taking his monsters.
Right.
They get confused on what the win condition and how are you supposed to take control if you're not really doing anything. It's more of a reactive deck where you're reacting to your opponent's plays, but you can still grind it out, and you can even combo further if you have the right cards. The more I play test the deck, the more I realize you can overextend if you have the right cards, but sometimes it's not in the favor because it's not what the deck is supposed to do. Like I've comboed with the addition of Sarama, I've comboed off into dealing like at least 6,000 damage with 2 to 3 cards, and it's possible, but sometimes it's not. It's not the play to make, because even though you're dealing 6,000 damage, if you can't win the game, you're still on a board with no negates. Right. You just have a bunch of floaters, and they set up this giant ass board next turn, and they waste all my cards, or they see everything on the board. They can just get rid of it. And unfortunately, our Link 2, Soul of Rage, it's a great disruptor, but it doesn't solve every problem. It barely solves all the problems.
Correct.
Or 50%. It's like I said, it's a deck that requires a lot of play testing, because you need to know how to react with your opponent. And if you don't play Yu-Gi-Oh that much, or if you haven't been playing for a while or don't have extensive knowledge, the deck kind of is a lot more trouble to pick up than other decks, where you can just be like, make this combo, I have this play, negate, or go for the OTK. No, this deck doesn't do that. It's simplifying and making a board disruptive enough to stop your opponent from making those plays. And you need to know how they make the plays to disrupt them correctly, because it's not straightforward. Mm-hmm. But I like those kind of decks because you're actually, it's the interaction, but it's also, I always like the decks that you could kind of trick or slip your opponent up.
Right, and there's definitely a lot of things in this list that I see right now that can slip your opponent up really fast if they're not prepared. Mm-hmm. That we'll jump right into. So before we jump into this deck list, it's definitely a really good thing you talked about there, how a lot of people see the metagame as half of it's like either you play a control deck or you play a combo deck. There's no in between, right? And this seems like the way you're talking about this deck, it seems like it's the happy medium between control and combo.
So yes, it's definitely, like I said, I use the term mid-range for a reason, because it does a little bit of both, and you're capitalizing on your knowledge of the game and the matchup and the meta calls, and then using that to outgrind your opponent. It's a grind, and
Right.
not every deck can grind better than others. And the great thing about this deck is it can capitalize on just failing and then coming back. You can blow up my field and I can still maintain my advantage and try to grind through it. You can play a Macrocosmos and I can still get all my cards back. You can remove my cards from play. You can literally dismantle my whole entire board, and by the end of the turn I could still have 4 or 5 cards either on the field or in my hand. It all depends on the scenario. And then, like I said, then I outgrind. I can either go into the Solar Rage, I can set up my board to slowly dismantle your board, and then maybe set up with Spirit of Banishments to, like I said, trick your opponent. I can talk about Spirit of Banishment later. It's kind of its own little, it's its own little strategy. So
I hate that card, dude.
I can't explain everything in like one simple discussion. It kind of just it comes down to the scenario. But that's what I love about decks like that, is that it's I guess, long story short, it's a more fun way of being able to adapt to other people's play styles and trying to get around their plays, because it's always different. You always have your bad matchups. My worst matchup, and still to this day, is almost similar strategies like Altergeist. Like it's all set up, and technically my deck's more about dismantling monster boards instead of dealing with other floodgate or stun strategies. It's a lot more difficult. When I was at the New Hampshire tournament, the majority, I say majority because there was at least 3 or 4 people playing and I think there was around 30 something. There's 30 plus players. I don't know the exact amount on the top of my head. There's 30 plus, and at least 3 or 4 of them that were there were playing like Gren Maju stun, and almost all of them made top.
Wow. Yeah,
because people, a lot of the Salamangreat, what were other good contenders? Sky Striker was there, Salamangreat was there. I'm trying to figure out. Altergeist was there. Altergeist did not top. Dinos were there. One Dino did top, but I think there was like 2 or 3 of them. There was actually 2 Unchained players as well, including myself. And I guess the other one was playing a Draco hybrid, and I think he like dropped round 4 and left. And I believe there were 7 rounds total. 7 rounds. It was 6 or 7, and then we played out all of top 8. So I literally started from top 8 all the way to finals, and we played it all out because the prizing was just worth playing everything out. I think in the end I ended up winning a mat and then 2 boxes of the newest set sealed.
Jesus Christ, dude, what a monster. Look at this guy.
And then we got OTS packs for entering, so I'm just like, yeah, it was worth the play out. Okay. So I think overall it was like yeah, I ended up playing 10 full matches, and I lost 2 of them.
Okay, but like after finals, obviously, then you won after the cut.
Yes, total was 10, and I lost total 2, which was in Swiss, of course. I lost to. Actually, if you want to break it down, you can. I can answer any of your questions.
Okay, so last thing, right before we get into the deck list, we had a viewer, Gary Phillips, asked, "Is Unchained better than Paleo?" Personal opinion. What do you think?
I think they're very different setups, because with Unchained, I don't mind going second or first, for the fact that they can extend and they can react to your opponent's plays. Paleo has a better, I feel like it has a better board setup and disruption setup, but if you stop their plays like hand on, or they can brick a lot worse than Unchained, in my opinion. Depending on the traps that you get, if you can even get your toads in the grave fast enough, if they stop your grave filling up to make the totally awesome play, or if you can't get your I forget the Xyz guy on board, but the Xyz that you can make, if you can't set those plays up, then Paleo sort of falls flat real fast. Where Unchained, like I described, early on, was it can adapt and it can grind through loss of advantage because everything's a floater and everything kind of comes back either from grave or gets special summon from the deck.
Right.
And the recursion in the deck is what makes it kind of different from other decks, because even if you disrupt their plays, they all have that clause where it's like, well, destroyed, and your links destroyed, add one from the grave back to the deck. Your effect monsters special destroyed, special summon one from deck. They all do that. And even with the addition of Sarama's gaining is a +1 by itself now. And that's exactly what we needed. We needed more graveyard control because we were just working from the deck the whole entire time. The only graveyard control that we had was the Link and the Abominable Soul. Or the Soul of Disaster, I'm sorry. And they weren't consistent enough because after that, we didn't have any real recursion. We didn't even have Pot of Avarice at the time. And Pot of Avarice just got, I believe, just came to 1 from the latest list. And people still weren't playing it because we still weren't feeding our grave fast enough. Because, like I said, we would try to recur. So Sarama is really a godsend and actually helps us with, outgrinding other control decks. But like I said, Altergeists and trap heavy decks are still a huge problem because at the end of the day, we're trying to disrupt monster boards more than just actual backup. And what I was doing during what I made for the meta call during the OTS was I knew my biggest problems were going second into heavy back row boards. So I couldn't afford Lightning Storms at the time because I believe they just came out.
Yeah, they were 130, 140.
And I'm like, money wasn't a huge problem, but I didn't see the point in dishing out 120 yet, even though I knew the card was good. Eventually I caved and I got my play set for cheap. But and I mean cheap because I got them for like 270. So what, I'm paying like 90 a piece. So
That's
it wasn't
not bad at all.
Yeah, so I got my play set recently for a good price, and that's why I did it, because I'm just like, I've been playing for a really long time, like I said, but sometimes you can't justify. I played in the dark. Let's put it this way: I played in the Dark Arm Crush Card Virus format, and that was the most expensive format I've ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Jesus Christ, dude! Don't get me started on that.
Where Dark Arm was a 300 to 500 single alone from a pack. Crush Card Virus itself was like 300 to 500 cards in the Gold series, which was sold out immediately.
Impossible to find.
And the only way I topped during that format was when I borrowed my friend's deck, and I did top, and that was one of the most fun, skill-intensive formats I remember. But it was so pay to play. It was very discouraging.
Yeah, shout outs to Upper Deck.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to what I was saying. I came into the tournament knowing that traps were going first against trap heavy or control heavy decks were a problem. So I did the main where, you see 2 evenly matches in the main, because I knew that I was going to run into this problem no matter what. An evenly match did put in a lot of effort when it came to, dismantling boards already set up or just dismantling back row. So to say, is Paleo better than Unchained? I don't want to give a bias because I'm playing Unchained, and I have had my experience with Paleo. But Paleo does have the ability to probably disrupt faster, but I feel like we can outgrind better.
Okay, so in the long run, you feel like Unchained...
Do I think it's better? Okay, so yes, I think Unchained is better because I feel like with the addition to Sarama, we have what we were looking for. We were looking for better advantage through the graveyard and just that graveyard recursion that, Sarama itself, like I said, they all just flow and they all just maintain their advantage, and Sarama just not only maintains advantage through the grave, but it also just it recycles and it helps set up plays and it helps extend. It almost does everything. You just can't play it turn 1 unless you can play turn 1. I lied. You can if you start off with the red twin, you should be able to play your Sarama turn 1. not necessarily you need to, but you can always do that because Sarama is a great extender. It's very random for the deck, but it's a great extender.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because like since it's an Unchained card, right? It lets you set monsters as well. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
Since Sarama says you can target any Unchained card in your graveyard, except for itself, and set it to your field, does that include like Rakea, Aruha, and then?
Yeah, so you target anything, and then it sets it, and it's just an Unchained card. So normally, I mean, it just depends on the situation. You know, usually you look at the Unchains that you go through, and you're like, well, what do I want to do? Am I going to just set a trap and blow up one of my monsters, and just trigger the deck effect and keep going, and just set up for next turn? You know, maybe get your Escape of the Unchained to get that second disruption up.
Yeah.
Or you can grab Giant Soul, and then just start getting cards back from the grave because you can set you can set the soul and then just literally destroy it. Disaster Soul then adds a card, special summons a Unchained from the graveyard, so you can get back your links. So like sometimes they would have a board. I would Sarama, get back my Disaster, set the Disaster, destroy it, and then Disaster would bring out like Rage or Anguish. Normally, if I have Anguish in the grave, I just take Anguish, and then I just suck up their monster during my turn.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can end on either, let's say, Zero Boros or Abomination. And Abomination, if I can connect attacks or destruction in, then your whole board's going by the end of the turn. Your whole board's gone.
Dude,
and
awesome.
Zero Boros is just a meta card where, like, if you make Zero Boros and you're against Salamangreat, you're probably going to win the game.
Yeah,
I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Like, I don't care what you do. You're like, if I just make a Zero Boros and I sit on it, I still think I'm going to win the game.
It's hilarious.
I don't see how they could get by it.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
like picture the deck in your head and then just see what they can do without getting Zero Boros.
Right, because they have to go into it at some point because they're gonna summon something, go into Bailings, right?
They would literally have to like Bailings and then set their traps.
Right, correct. Like, what do you do with that? And hopefully have a what's that snake card? Like, I don't remember what it's called.
Oh, Prohibit Snake.
Yeah, in their hand or something like that.
I mean, that's fancy, but I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, Zeph Kez also enjoys that this deck is getting a lot of recognition. He says he invested into it as soon as it dropped. Support is slow, but grinding it is great, especially with the spirits. So, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the way
that's
what I explained earlier. It's like one of those decks that a lot of people didn't jump on because A, it didn't do enough, and B, a lot of people don't understand the control aspect where it's more of a reactive deck where you're not making giant boards, you're simplifying the game state. You're not really gonna see, when you watch someone play, you're gonna be like, well, they just. I've gone first and like literally just T-set and just ended, and I'm like, that doesn't do it. That in retrospect, that doesn't look like it's doing anything. And then I'm going against Spirals and they're just comboing off for 15 minutes, and all I did was T-set. And you know, maybe I would end up like torrenturing their field, and then I get my twin to just, let's say, get like Abomination, and then I just start floating from there. So majority of the time, I made my deck to just be more control and not make some giant board. And sometimes you don't even have to extend. It's all about maintaining your advantage. I never really wanted to waste a card to go 2 for 1 just to, you know, summon Solar Rage. So if I felt like I was wasting more resources in my hand to make it, sometimes I would just go simple and I would just summon Rakia, blue twin, and then just set 2 trap cards and then just worked with that. And you know, it would work most of the time. It really would. It's because they don't extend. They basically take your opponent's strategies and just kind of, you know, work off that. And if that doesn't work, then you're kind of just destroying their field. But the thing is that you need to get that set up before it starts showing premise, or you need to go against a deck that has a really hard time against floaters, which some decks do. Salamangreat, again, has a real hard time against decks that just keep floating and keep recuperating after like every single time you negate or destroy something, because you can just summon, they'll rage you, and then you'll just slam out either a big soul, or you'll just slam out maybe more monsters and just crash and just keep going, and they won't be able to handle it for long.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of decks that kind of do similar aspects, like I have really hard time against of course Pendulum and Altergeist, because
Oh man.
Pendulum itself is just ridiculous. I could rant so much about Pendulum and how it's a completely different game, but Altergeist itself was always our biggest problem, because multi-faker and multi-faker and, no, I'm sorry, not even multi-faker, but what's the bounce one? What's his name?
Siliquist.
Soliloquy. So that card single-handedly stops our deck.
Yes, that is very true.
It returns absolutely everything, and I cannot progress because this deck has a real hard time extending if you can't already get the setup.
Right.
So I'm sitting there with like a soul, and they just soliloquy, bounce it back. I'm like, okay, I can't do anything about that. Try it again, because God forbid I can't even keep my monsters on the field to actually blow anything up. All they need to do is technically multi-faker and get that set up, get that spoofing set up, and I'm losing on that clock because I can't outgrind them, and that was always a major problem. And I played in many tournaments where I went toe to toe, and I couldn't keep up. I've lost with a person just top decking Konkiri, and then
oh my god,
stopping the attack, negating my other monster effect, and then next turn getting the spoofing, sets the spoofing, and I just can't follow through, and it was so frustrating. So there's no real out to Altergeist, like no matter what. They play the triple solemn package, and
right, obviously
they kind of just, they can reroute any type of win con and just kind of disrupt for days, and it's very difficult. It's such a it has its weaknesses, but if I were to say what's our worst matchup, it would, like, no doubt it would be Altergeist, and then second would be Pendulum, because Pendulum just does it. Like, I mean, Enderman Pendulum, like, that deck is just ridiculous. You remove monsters, you negate everything. No matter what, I always seem to I remember because I used to play at locals against Pendulum decks 24/7. I would be able to destroy their whole board. I'd get that setup going, and then somehow they Pendulum summon it all back, and I can't. We couldn't match that speed. And I mean, I've been getting better results with that as my side deck has been kicking in a little bit more. My Lightning Storms have been helping. But it's with Pendulum and Altergeist, it's definitely more of how you side, because it's such a terrifying matchup sometimes.
See, ironically enough, Lightning Storm would deal with those two matchups greatly.
So it would, but like I said, Solemn Package kind of just it's a magnet at the end of the day, where you're just baiting stuff out, and right. Pendulums, even if you destroy their whole field, if they have cards in their hand, eventually they're just gonna get out the scales again and just do it all over again. I mean, you literally have, with Pendulums, you have to destroy their field and have some sort of disruption, or they're going to recover, and they recover so fast. And like I said, Pendulum is just a different game. I don't even consider it normal Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just different.
All right.
It's like, you guys like all that new 7 series, right?
Yeah.
Rush Duel is literally Pendulum, the card game.
I don't even know anything about it. We can get into it at a future discussion, but you ready to go right into the deck list? Because there's some questions some of these viewers have. So let's go right through card by card, and we're going to talk about... Well, I'm going to ask a lot of questions about your decisions here. Sound good?
Go for it. Yeah.
All right, so 1 Unchained Solo and 1 Disaster. I had one viewer, Zach Mir. only one Abominable Unchained Soul. Do you like it better at 2 or 1? And why 1?
So, all right. So that's the thing. I've been tampering with this a lot, and one of the biggest things that frustrated me while I was playing this deck is, for God knows whoever hates me up there, they love giving me each of my 8s no matter what. And I didn't know if it was increasing my deck count or just, cutting them, but I would see them all the time where it warranted. I would lose games, and I remember I showed you a few of my hands one time at locals. I'm just like,
Yes.
I would draw all of them. I'm like, it's nice and everything. I love that they love me so much, but I was getting these awkward brick hands because I was playing 3 or 4 total souls, and they would just keep bricking, and I didn't have room to play the trade-in engine. I just didn't have room because I'm trying to keep up with all these decisions to actually keep our deck consistent and keeping up with the meta. Where I'm just like, yo, if I get Ash Blossom while I'm trading in, like I'm gonna lose. I really
Right.
I can't -2 myself. Oh, I can't -1 myself with a deck that's solely based off of maintaining an advantage 1-for-1.
Mm-hmm.
And so I brought it down to 1 because, God forbid I keep drawing them. I don't have giant searches, but I wanted to cut that likelihood down because it was happening so much. I can let you know, though, that over the course of time, I have changed it to playing now 2 Abominable Unchained Souls and 1 Disaster.
Obviously, the 1 Disaster, because like you never want to see that card ever.
So the thing is, if it was my personal opinion, I like Disaster over Abominable, but that's because I like the ability to just easily disrupt boards, and I think it's more of the fact that if they remove that Disaster from play for whatever reason, I can still get another one, and that is one of our best graveyard recursion cards. Like I said, with the Sarama combo, you just can special summon Disaster from the grave,
Yeah.
and then just start like spitting out any of your links that you normally had in the graveyard. Start either extending or disrupting their board from there, or just making your play that you wanted to recycle from your grave, because technically you go through a lot of your Unchains really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's absolutely true.
And it still doesn't warrant me to want to play Avarice, but it does happen. And like Disaster is such a key part, but it's such a brick. And the thing is that Abominable Unchained is not. It's not a brick, but you need monsters to work off of it. And when I just draw my 8s and I just sit there, I'm like, I'm gonna lose unless you force the disruption or the destruction.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Which happens. I mean, Abominable Unchained Soul is amazing. Like, it resolves. It's exactly like Multifaker. It resolves after the destruction.
All
So
right.
you can they can literally Solemn Judgment one of your cards, destroy your cards, and then you get the effect. Like, it doesn't miss timing, and that's what's great about it.
It's on resolution.
Like, yeah, it's all resolution.
Okay, copy that. So that makes a lot of sense there. You just felt like you were drawing it too often. That's why you cut it down to 1 at that moment.
Exactly. Like all these choices, right, as you see from my old deck list, were just pure decisions from, just playing it over and over again, and what was giving me the best outcome. Because, like I said, it's a 1-for-1 grind, mid-range play style. You're playing to, you're playing against the meta. You're meta calling everything. If someone's playing Cyber Dragons, I need to know what Cyber Dragons do. If someone's playing Spiral, I need to know what it does, because I'm not going to be able to play the game unless I know what I'm going up against. So I had knowledge on all these decks.
Mm-hmm.
And, looking at this deck going forward, the ratios are awkward. I know this.
Yes.
I completely know this. I'm 100% on board with anyone saying these ratios are awkward. The point is that these were the right amount at the time, because this was showing me the best win percentage against the meta decks that I was facing at the time, which was Salad, Pendulum, Altergeist, and I didn't really see too many Spiral. A lot of people were going back and forth with Spiral. I saw more Rogue decks than anything else. I put like against like in general, like even at regionals. I played Unchained at the at the Connecticut regional, the Hartford one, and I did well until I think round 7. That's when I decided to drop when I was X3 against Sour Dragons because um, I was bricking so much, and I I think this was at the time when they were definitely different. Sarama was not out yet,
Mhm.
so I was playing Sarama less, but a lot of the plays that I noticed were just maintaining the right, like the torrential and the evenly match are in the DD Crow are all meta calls.
Okay.
The one soul and the phantasme were meta calls, and each disaster and abominable chain were meta calls because of I need to be able to make this certain border extend, or I need to get my solar rage out. I need to get my 2 disruptions. I need to simplify the game state.
Mhm.
And if you brick with just 2 cards, or if you have 2 unusable cards in your hand, your plays can sometimes just fall so flat. Because I've been stuck with hands like one of each soul, a ghost ogre, and let's say impermanence or
Yeah.
torrential. Like I'm banking off my torrential, and they stop that and they keep extending. I'm gonna lose. Whatever.
Mhm.
It's how the deck works, and I give my credit to Sarama. Just Sarama came out that day, by the way.
Mhm.
So the reason why this list is even talking about Sarama now is during the OTS it came out that day. So that was the first time I used it. I've
Mhm.
been playtesting it online, so I knew how it was going to play out. But this is me actually using it for the first time in a real tournament. And the regional before that didn't have it, so I'm using all the information. This was day 1, and I think I just threw out like I forget. I think I was playing like main deck. I think I was just playing Called by the Graves earlier on,
Mhm.
and I just took them out, sided them, kept a DD Crow in, and then threw in the Saramas, and then kept it 41 and hope I just didn't see the 8s because that's the only thing I just didn't want to see.
Okay. So I'm gonna skim through the monsters because we're 37 minutes in, so a lot of time has passed. Definitely a good discussion so far. So I'm gonna go through
I'll
a
make it.
couple of
I'll make
these.
it quicker. I'll shut up. Don't worry.
No worries. So 3 Aruha, 2 Sarama, and 3 blue, 3 red. Obviously, these are like the staples, right? Along with the 2 tour guide because you can only play 2.
Tour guide's weird. Like sometimes I feel like tour guide, I could take her out or just put her to 1 because she doesn't do too much. She, I mean, Cherubini's not even really that good of a play, and it used to be, but like now it's just you're usually when you have tour guide, you have no other ways to extend. You're you tour guide and you either sit on your monster that you get out with tour guide, or you go into Cherubini and you send your banishment to the grave and you set a few traps and you hope it doesn't just you don't you just don't get mollywopped. Like it's the plays with tour guide are very lackluster, but the great thing about tour guide is the tutor fact of any of your fiends from the deck can get special summoned. If you have Aruha in your hand and you have a tour guide, like you can turn 1 make a BLS. And new addition that I added to my deck was for Altergeist was BLS, the BLS link. Um, you have tour guide and Aruha in your hand, you can make the BLS link. The BLS link is my answer to Altergeist as of now because
Right.
they have almost no way to stop that card. They need to play Ninjarisu, the World Chalice 2 link to get rid of it.
Hmm.
And if they don't, then I don't think they have outs.
That is very
But
true.
but tour guide, in my opinion, is lackluster because the plays don't really justify in my head, her just being stable. She she's great because she tutors and they're all level 3, and I've tried playing Sing and it doesn't work. Like tour guide Sing and get your hand trap, link into some like Cherubini. Like I thought of it, like it just doesn't. She doesn't do too much. We're not BA. We can't just keep extending and special summoning. So she's great for just tutoring a monster if you can extend.
Hmm.
But other than that, she's she's really lackluster.
Okay, copy that. One of my viewers asks Zach Mir, you play one Dark Spirit of Banishment, but you don't play the other Dark Spirit. Is there a reason for that?
When I was playing with Malice, there was a lot of times where I was just holding it because a lot of like it was more of a timing issue where sometimes they wouldn't it wouldn't really matter if I had Malice because it just triggers upon activating an effect. And the real big thing that I like about Banishment is the fact that it is such a unique hand trap in ways of disruption and just winning the game,
Mm-hmm.
and just recursion. It's a very unique card. Malice is also unique, but I wasn't making the topologics or anything that really resulted in Malice being as of use, other than just random recursion. If at that point I was looking at, I'm like, I should just play two Dark Spirit of Banishments. Like it's doing the same thing, but I'm seeing it more often. And if they get rid of my other banishment, at least I have another one. If they remove my one in the grave and I have the other one in my hand, you know, I could potentially just win this game right now, which it did happen. It happened a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When I switched it over to two, a lot of people were getting rid of it and were just avoiding it. I played against heroes, and the guy kept going. He made his malicious bane, went for it, and I dark spirited banishment and just stopped his OTK and just got rid of his field next turn. It was great. It's so much better for reacting with your opponent than Malice, because even though Malice has more of a control option of how you summon your monster,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't do much if your monster isn't doing anything upon summon, and it doesn't do much if you don't really have any of the top logics because you can't trigger anything. So I was running into the problem where I just had this card and I'm like, well, I can just it's a free floater, that's about it.
Right.
But it wasn't really putting in any sort of strategy other than just stalling.
Right. Okay, that
So
makes a lot of sense, actually.
so I kept it to one spirit because, like I said, a lot of this deck was to brick the least. I was bricking a lot, and just it was mostly meta calls where I was, like I said, a lot of the ratios are really awkward, but it was mostly through just what I was seeing in real life with my hands in testing,
Mm-hmm.
and just through multiple plays against Salad, Altergeist, and Pendulum, and a lot of my ratios were built through just a lot of trial and error. So I do like Malice as a card, and I was playing it at first. I really was. But then I dropped it down to one because I was really only finding use for banishment. And it gave me a little more room to put in more meta call cards like the Crow and the Evenly Matched and the Torrentials. Putting in three Torrentials was hard. Also, putting in two Ghost Ogres was hard. At first, I was playing one, but I really liked seeing that card, so I bumped it to two.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the decks, like Altergeist and Salamangreat, get hurt by that card. So oh yeah, also, it was because if you have Abomination too, if you have Abomination on the field and you have Ghost Ogre in your hand, you're getting two destroyed, like no matter what. It's great. It's a great feeling. But a lot of the calls were just through extensive testing. And I mean, yeah, the banishment made sense. You could turbo it with Cherubini to the graveyard if you really wanted to, and then after that, you didn't have to worry about any more about sending your monsters to the grave. You didn't have to worry about looking for banishment or Malice into your hand to get it. Like, it was one and done, and I thought that was really proficient. But yeah, later on, I upped it to two because I wanted to see that card more often.
Okay. Copy that. So all these hand traps. Again, the ratios are very interesting. Phantasma at 1, DD Crow at 1. One of my viewers asked, let me pull up his name here. Let's see. Zeph Kez, would you consider bumping Ghost Ogres to 3 so you can pop your own twins to get their effects?
You could, but I mean, you're technically losing advantage at that point. Like,
Right.
I like this. I like the idea of being able to do that. And like I said, the Abomination strategy was really my, you know, that was what I was looking forward to using it as. But Ghost Ogre not negating effects does hurt you sometimes in the long run. It's because no matter what, if you're playing against a combo heavy deck and you're just destroying their monster, then sometimes it doesn't even hurt them. It's just it's a small problem. It's one less negate, or maybe it's one less piece that they need to overextend with. But Unchained does have a hard time keeping up with multiple combos being thrown at the board, and I really did like Ghost Ogre during that format because it was a very weird transition right now. Like Spiral was huge. We were still getting into the format, kind of.
Right.
And like I said, it comboed with Abomination. It does combo with our monsters. I never really had to use it with my because technically, yeah, the blue twin, is kind of like that. You know, quick effect, destroy anything on your field. So I never really needed or I guess I've never really used Ghost Ogre to trigger on my own monsters. It is cool in theory. I do like that. But like I said, the main thing I was worrying about with the deck was maintaining that advantage, going 1-for-1 with all the plays, and just trying to keeping that grind and keeping up. So necessarily this format bumping up to 3, it does seem like a good idea. As of now, I'm still playing around with what hand traps to use, so I did take Ghost Ogre out for the time being, as you'll see in my new deck list, but he was very helpful during the tournament, and I would absolutely recommend playing Ghost Ogre as a hand trap. In this deck, the rest of them, like, I think there's 10 total. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. There's 10 hand. I count Impermanence as a hand trap.
Yes,
so,
of course.
So yeah, there's 10. I thought 9 to 10 was like the magic number. Phantasme is there because honestly, this deck loves Phantasme. Phantasme gives you the potential to OTK in this deck, and it of course fixes your hand from the 8s.
Yeah.
Or any bricks that you'll see. Other than that, the Ghost Ogres and the Ash Blossoms are kind of, if you want me to explain it, I can, but, 3 of, because honestly, like I said, the format was in the making, and this card is the most versatile hand trap, and will continue to be the versatile hand trap as I read cards that literally say, quick effect, you can discard this card to negate, adding cards, special summoning from deck, and sending a card from deck to the graveyard, which every freaking deck does. Don't tell me it doesn't, because it does. Every deck does that. I can't stress it. Like, it's the most versatile hand trap. Ghost Ogre, it's similar, but it doesn't negate anything. The disruption's there, but it helps with our deck for the destruction factor. Like I said, Abomination, that you're gonna blow up a lot of cards. It's great. And the disruption for some decks like Salamangreat, Sky Striker, and Altergeist is very key on how you play Ghost Ogre, but it can be very devastating. DD Crow was a meta call. Like I said, if I'm going against like Salamangreat, Altergeist, not Pendulum so much, but other rogue decks love recycling cards and doing stuff in the grave. DD Crow can sometimes just out you. And I really like that about DD Crow. It's a very versatile card, and it's a meta call card. And then Impermanence, I always thought Effect Veiler was a great card, and now you have a better version of Effect Veiler. And when the new Ghost Girl comes out, I'm gonna want that one too, because that card's really good as well. But Impermanence put in a lot of work, and it always has. I don't really have much to say about it other than, it's a great 2 or 3 of, and I would probably always play it unless I was playing a very combo heavy deck.
Right. So everything else in your deck is relatively standard. The only question I have would be Pot of Extravagance for the main board. Pot of Extravagance.
Sorry, I'm choking because I get asked this every single time.
You have Soul of Rage. Has your pot ever hit all of your rages and all of your anguish?
Yes, it has. Absolutely. And boy, do I cringe. But it does not mean the game is over. And that's the great thing.
Yeah. Hold on. His audio just cut off. Hello, hello. Are you alive?
Hi, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I was like, yo, what happened? All right.
I don't know, but it it does not sit on monsters. I mean, it does sit on monsters for part of its win con, and the deck needs advantage so badly. But I was noticing while playing this deck, like I said, I picked this deck up from the get go as well. So as I was playing, I'm realizing that you're not really going into all of them all the time. You barely go into anguish more than once. You you will go into Soul Rage one or two times. I don't think I've ever gone into it a third time. And sometimes you don't even make Abomination.
Right.
You're you sometimes I win the game just by sitting on one Soul Rage and just disrupting from there.
Mm-hmm.
The probability of extravagance, like, and it does happen, like milling all three with your six count because you're always calling six,
Mm-hmm.
is so slim, and it happens probably, like, if I were to say at a regional, it probably happens like every 4 rounds, or like once out of every 4 rounds. And I mean, I see the card almost every game. The only time it gets to be a problem is when you're drawing two of them, and it does happen. You'll play extravagance, you'll draw into another extravagance, and then you're just like, what the fuck? But
Right.
that's like with every card. The latest Unchained deck that did top, I did see a deck list from a recent one that topped. They were playing three desires, and it's like the same thing. You draw two desires, you don't want to play both desires.
Right.
Like, the deck doesn't warrant for removing from play half your deck. It's there because we have no initial advantage gain. We're finding good ways to do that, and a lot of people didn't want to spend the money on extravagance, and I get that. I've had extravagance forever because, like I said, I like slow decks. So when extravagance came out, I'm like, I need this card because all my decks are they would benefit from this card. So I've had this card ever since it got out. So I never really had a problem obtaining this card. So when I started using it in an Unchained, it never really disrupted my extra deck synergy, other than maybe a few times, or maybe I'd mill my break sword and I'd be like, oh, I can't rank 3 with my tour guide,
Mm-hmm.
or I can't go into Cherubini. But like I said, Cherubini was never really that powerful of a play to begin with. A lot of the extra cards aren't that powerful besides Soul of Rage, and that's why I feel like it's probably one of the best draw cards to use in this deck besides Trade-In. And I say that because Trade-In's a great one-for-one option
Mm-hmm.
in this deck, because your guys can all get recovered from the graveyard now, and they all get effects upon summoning them, or during your turn you can just actually use them.
Mm-hmm.
But for +1 draw cards, this one by far has been showing the greatest results without disrupting me. But like I said, unlucky, it does happen. And it will continue to happen. As you look at my new list, I play one less anguish because it was never really a problem to begin with. So I still stick with it. Like, I still use it. It hasn't warranted me to not use it. And I've been having good results with it so far, so I do like it personally. And I like that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is giving us draw cards that actually have some sort of, restriction that can cause us to, double check, or, think about our other options for draw spells, instead of, be like, oh yeah, you should play one Pot of Greed and one Graceful Charity no matter what. It's like,
Right.
no, we don't have that anymore. We don't, like, Duality used to be staple, and Duality's not even staple anymore. It's like,
That's
we have
so sad because the special summoning limit was too rough.
Yeah,
Way
no,
too
that
rough.
it's cycled out. It didn't age well.
Like, Pot of Extravagance, if you think about it, every deck that would play Duality would rather play Extravagance instead. I can't think of a single deck that would.
Exactly, and like I said, this
Except
deck
for Exodia,
can do
but, like,
either or, so it's like, it doesn't hurt it too bad.
Right.
Okay, like I could say it doesn't really hurt it. It just, you get unlucky and you can't make a play, and I mean, that can cause you the game, but at the same time, it's like, it's very unlikely.
Okay. Super fine with that. Alright, let's go into the extra deck board. Notice you're playing 2 Break Swords. A commenter asked, I think it was Zach Mir, He asks, have you heard of Super Quanto Mech Beast Grand Pulse yet?
So I liked Breaksword because if you have any other card on the field besides Breaksword, you can pop them both.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can pop your monster and you can scrap dragon their cards and literally. Why would you not want to pop one of your Unchained monsters and then pop any of their cards? Like,
Right.
it's all just free advantage of that. You're literally just destroying any card on their field,
Mm-hmm. Copy.
and you're getting possibly an abomination or a disaster soul from your deck to the field, and then you're taking more stuff. Like, I I like the quantum, and I thought about it, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the time, the only like if I go into a trap heavy deck like Altergeist and I make quantum, like he's getting negated. Same thing with Breaksword. He's getting negated. He's a magnet. I mean, unless they're super unlucky and I get to like destroy both their spells and traps, like I don't see quantum ever fulfilling, destroying two spells and traps theoretically. I expect him to do the same thing as Breaksword and literally just become a magnet and just get negated or them just reacting to it.
Mm-hmm.
At least Breaksword can attack, need be, and I can literally combo with any of my cards if I have on the field. If I have the face down trap, I can destroy my face down trap, destroy one of their cards,
Right.
trigger my chambers or my escapes, or I can trigger any of my Unchained monsters if I have them on the field. So I think the synergy with Breaksword was the best out of the rank 3 options.
Okay, so you're saying it's just more versatile because it feels
Exactly.
like Grand Pulse, like you wouldn't summon Breaksword first because it doesn't do anything turn one.
Correct.
Grand Pulse can do something turn one, and that's the only upper edge it has over Breaksword. But Breaksword can pop things. It doesn't have to be
Correct.
specifically a spell or trap, correct?
Correct. And like I said, my deck wasn't really built for overextending. It was built for control. So if you're assuming that you can quantum, you can tour guide and then like set your trap off, I mean, you could, but what kind of board am I trying to make by negging everything? It's like you're setting up a Soul Rage and just hoping that taking one of their monsters just works. Like it, you could go into Unicorn, and I will talk about why. And the reason I'm saying that is because I added it after, but you can go into Unicorn. But I never really wanted to go turn one and be like, here's this big board, try and stop me, because that's not how my board worked. I would just, if I did that, I would literally get, they would lightning storm me and I'd be like, okay, cool, I got a monster. My monster's triggered. I can't destroy anything on their side of the field, and now I'm just sitting there. So I get the idea with the combo,
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately the deck wasn't really trying to do that where I warranted wanting to use quantum. So Breaksword does have more versatility in my eyes, which is why I chose two of them, because like I said, I was like, look at, like, you can see how thin the deck, the extra deck selections was because of extravagance. So there wasn't a lot of room for options. It was more about, if you see multiples in that, it's because they were kind of utilized as, something that I would want to go into that game more than others. Like Cherubini is not a big deal. B-Cop wasn't a big deal. The Trusbania, the Topologics weren't huge.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to see Unchained, Abomination, Soul, Anguish, and Rage, Anguish, and Breaksword.
Yeah, that just makes sense. These are the cards you want to see, and
Correct.
the other ones are whatever. They get hit by extravagance, it's not going to
Like the B-Cop was literally in there for just the generic 2. Like
Correct.
that's what it was there for. It was a dark generic 2. It was, in case I stole their monster for whatever reason, I needed to, I just needed to get rid of it. Like B-Cop, I don't think ever really uses its effect. It was just there because it's a dark fiend generic 2.
Right. You can just mind control whatever, right? And then just link it off so
Yeah.
you don't get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so everything else in the extra deck, relatively standard. You outline your choices really well. Let's go into the sideboard. So, the sideboard looks pretty standard. The double Nibiru, the extra DD Crow because you want to play two, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And the Drolls, the mind controls, obviously. The call buys, the third evenly matched. And then my real question with this sideboard would just be the full house. That's the only question I have with this sideboard. Everything else is extremely standard with this deck. This is the
Well,
most standard
I mean,
sideboard.
you guys wanted spice, you got spice. So,
What the heck, dude?
so imagine, imagine having any of your like two. Imagine having three trap cards in your hand, and then you're just playing against some trap deck. You're playing against Altergeist, and you just have full house, and they just start, getting their protocols. They're spoofing out. This card not only potentially destroys their whole back row, but you can destroy your back row or just destroy your own full house and just either heavy storm their board in trap form while triggering your traps, or just blowing them out. It was one of those cards that had that. It literally had that synergy with the right matchup.
Wow.
I would. So the thing about Full House is Full House's requirements are ludicrous, but it's relatively easy if you have it for the right matchup. If you're going against Altergeist and they have a spoofing and protocol or what manifestation, like those are all going to stay face up.
Right.
So your work's halfway done, and then the rest is going to be like a solemn package, or you don't know what else it is. And say you don't even want to get rid of, or say they get rid of their face up trap in response for whatever reason, you can always trigger one of your destructions for face up cards on Full House itself. So you can always count Full House the card itself as a face up trap card to destroy.
Wait, I'm confused. I'm confused because it says the card says target two other face-up spells and traps.
Oh, besides itself?
Yeah, besides itself. Yeah.
Does it say besides itself?
It just says two other, so I'm assuming that would mean besides itself.
See, that was the thing because one of the old ways that this card worked, and I didn't get called on it. So, and to be perfectly honest, because I'm not going to lie about it, it's you used to be able to target itself, just kind of like how MST could technically target itself as a spell and trap to just destroy if it was already set on the field.
Right.
I mean, like I said, the requirements still require you to have two face-up spells anyways, or spells and traps anyways.
Right.
So it's not necessarily going to happen as Full House targets until Full House tries to resolve.
Right.
But I'm not sure on the wording and how that correlates with how it targets, because actually that's a good point. If it does say it like that, that does make sense that you wouldn't be able to target itself. But as it used to be played more often during Necroz's format, it was able to target itself upon resolution. But the point of this card was not because of that factor. It was because, like I said, Altergeist was a huge matchup. And I didn't have Lightning Storms at the time. And this was kind of my, random, potential blowout card if I was really running into so many problems with trap heavy decks like Paleo and Altergeist. Right. In worst case scenario, I need to blow up my own face down cards. Sure, perfectly fine. Trigger my chamber or my escape. I'm getting more advantage that way. Like the cards synergized, and I did get it to go off once, not at the OTS, but during the locals I did get it off once, and I saw a promise with it. I did try it out. I did side it in during the OTS. I just never saw it. So I mean, I took it out because it was more of a random gimmick of a spicy tech that I wanted to side. Right. Even though on my new one I still have more spicy tech, but I mean, it's not as spicy as this, but it was more of a call of, one of those old cards that still had, some sort of synergy with this deck, where, my main problem with the deck is going against other control decks. So this card can capitalize on destroying control decks while potentially giving my deck advantage.
Okay, copy. So we have one more question, and two more questions actually before we go into your full Master Rule 5 deck list. That's going to be the spicy one. One of the viewers asked if you could, or Gary Phillips, if you wanted to increase the deck's number of cards, would you want to? So let's say you're running 41 right now. Would you want to bump it up to 42 if there was another promising card?
So I'm insane, and my OCD is even more insane. So 41 gives me like the chills. Like you have no idea. Because in the back of my head, if I'm losing because of how my hand is breaking or I'm not seeing certain cards, my consistency factor triggers in my head that I'm just not, my numbers aren't correct. So when I see 41 and I can go thinner, because I've been playing for a long time, and rule of thumb is that consistency is key. If I can go 40 and play more one ofs, I'd love that because I have more options. But that's just not logistically like possible. It's I I think the most I've ever bumped up a deck was to 43, and that's because it was like light sworns or some nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a fan of bumping up cards because I'm not a fan of bumping up decks because, well, the deck size, because I want to see cards, like, and if I don't see them, and I know, a lot of people like playing 43, 45 cards because, you need to play this card, or, no matter what, you want this as an out. And, theoretically it can work with certain builds. I took 41 due to the fact I was seeing my eights so much. I wanted to try it. I'm like, will 41 make me see these cards less? And I mean, it did every now and then. But then I always have the thought back in my head. I'm like, wow, why didn't I see any of my monsters? Like, is it because I'm playing 41 cards? Why am I not seeing
Ah,
any of my hand trap? Is it because I'm playing 41 cards? It's a mental thing. Like, honestly, like, you'll hear anyone that wins a tournament say, why do you play 41 cards? And they'll give you some bullshit excuse like, oh, 41's the, YCS winning number. It's like, okay, it's not a real reason. Like, you play more cards in your deck because you want these answers.
correct.
And my issue with this was, my answers needed to stay in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
My answers needed to stay in the deck. And my answers are these eights. These eights cannot answer or give me better results if they're in my hand. So I bumped it up to 41. I did like 41 because, it's one extra card. So your ratios aren't going to get thrown off too much. But if I could, I would always keep my decks at a consistent 40 unless, there's alternate strategies that require you to increase your deck. With this deck, because it is a control deck, I don't see why I need to make I don't see why I need to make it a 41 card deck, besides the fact that my deck does rely on eights being in the deck, and I do not
Right.
want to see them. I do not play a draw card or an engine that will recycle them besides Phantasme. And Phantasme is already a card that, you need set up to actually go off, or your opponent needs to play a certain card to go off. And it's one of those things where, I tried it out, I liked it, and it worked. But I don't swear by increasing your deck past 40. I am more of a 40 card deck player, for consistency is key kind of guy. So I wouldn't bump it up. I think the most I'd be willing to go with this deck, like I said, is probably like 41 to 43.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like if I was really pressing the issue. But like I said, it's a personal opinion. I would never tell someone, like, hey, don't ever play 43 or 45 cards. It's like you can still beat me no matter what your fucking deck count is.
Right.
But
Copy.
but consistency, if you want to be logical about it, consistency is key. If you're playing a combo deck,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why you would play more than 41 cards, because you need to see certain cards.
Right.
You
want
are
to see
you
the
are
combo.
digging for combos.
Right.
So this one isn't combo, but it can have combos, and you do want to see cards. So I want to see my Unchained traps. I want to see my Unchained monsters. I don't want a handful of hand traps. I do not want to see my eights. So I think, 40, 41, and like I said, to 43 is a good enough number for this.
Okay. The question of the night. So you have a ton of questions here. It's super, super popular, dude. The question of the night that has been asked also since the beginning is, so you play a lot of hand traps in your deck. Have you ever considered playing a kaiju variant of the deck where your sole purpose is to break boards? Or do you like the hand trap version better?
I mean, the deck can't the deck's breaking boards on your opponent's turn half the time. So the way I think is you're not able to sustain that. You can't sustain that strategy unless you're already in the middle of the game, and you have that chance of just getting OTK'd or just getting, you know, three negate, 5 monster boarded, and that's why I'm like, you need to. The name of the game for this deck is stopping them early on and maintaining that 1-for-1 grind. So hand traps are the only way you can stop an opponent from playing turn 0.
Okay.
I like not playing hand traps because I as an old Yu-Gi-Oh player, I hated, thinking that I needed to play staples in my main deck, but being competitive requires, actually, doing things you don't always like. You gotta stop, looking at everything as, completely fun factor, and you think of, what's gonna give you the best results. And I think this deck works best as of maintaining 1-for-1 advantage plays. And the only way to do that is to stop your opponent from creating these godlike boards or just creating these scenarios where you just can't do anything. And
Right.
I think that, you in this kind of meta, you don't necessarily need to rely on hand traps, but they're very necessary for decks that can't go through multiple negates or go through just multiple floodgates.
Right. Because a kaiju won't always solve every solution, correct?
And you'll see this in my new deck. Like, you can have Nibiru in my new deck. I'm siding lava golems for my kaiju, but at the end of the day, I can, like I said, if you're going against Adamancipator or just like Pendulum, Enderman, or just cards that just have more than like 2 or 3 negates, like a kaiju doesn't solve that. Yeah, you're right. A kaiju doesn't solve that problem. And unfortunately, Unchains don't really disrupt during your turn. They disrupt during your opponent's turn.
Right.
So if I can't create that board after going second, then I can't even play. Like, what am I gonna do? It's I can't set and pass against a board of 5 and expect myself to win. It's already a losing battle at that point. Like, even if I have torrential, if there's negates on the board, it's not going to do anything. I mean, I could have torrential and impermanence, but I mean, technically that means I either just drew impermanence or I just didn't use it turn 1 for some reason.
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna show the viewers your new build, Master Rule 5, and while they're digesting that eye candy, we're gonna answer a little bit more questions. We do
Go
have
for
some,
it.
We do have some replays lined up, but since it's going on a lot longer than I expected it to be, we're just gonna save the replays for a separate video, so that'll be up on my channel at some point. But
Yep.
5 questions, 4 or 5 questions. Oh man, you ready, dude?
Hey, I've been doing it. Let's keep it going.
Here's the Master Rule 5 list that he's using. Feel free to drop the questions, but we're going to answer the questions you received before in the order they have been received. Magical hats, how do you feel about that in the deck? Like, where you can grab your traps and set them and use them as defense, then pop them for later to get the effects.
So, because of the fact that that's such a gimmicky card, I'm going to give you a sarcastic answer. So I have this hand trap that I can do that already with, that not only keeps coming back from my grave to my hand whenever I play my cards, but at the same time doesn't require me to draw key pieces of my deck to work. I don't really find Magical Hats consistent at all, but Magical Hats has always been a gimmicky, ever since Reversal Quiz, that card's been, hey, have you tried this idea? Magical Hats is such a weird card, and it's such an old card. I understand it. Like I said, I played Full House. I understand how, you want to play these cool, like I played Storm too, like the Storm that people used to use in Quill Forts.
Yeah.
Like I was also trying that card out. I tried all these things. I tried an artifact. I think it's like Vajranda or something like that. The dark blue one when they
Wait,
declare.
people play that?
So I mean, they declare a direct attack, right? You special summon it, and it destroys all your spells and traps. And I'm just like thinking, like, ooh, woohoo! I can destroy my traps during their turn. It's like you gotta understand when you're playing against the meta, like you expect them to set up their board first or disrupt your plays first, and then go for the attack. So cards that are waiting for specific actions that can't really activate until like battle phase or end phases, they're very lackluster because sometimes they don't even exist until they don't even exist before the battle phase. Like battle phase, evenly matched, or just a board full of negates go into battle phase. Magical Hats isn't going to save me.
Right. You like the flexibility in your cards.
Dark Spirit of Banishment literally activates during damage step.
That's broken.
And it almost does the same thing where it's just like, direct. Well, it doesn't do the same thing, but it causes the same type of play where it's gaining unnecessary advantage out of nowhere. And I honestly think like if we had any more gimmicky, type of cards that would like cause advantage, like I mean, Infernal Reckless Summoning, same thing. It's like
right.
This card's great in theory, but at the same time, you're relying on your opponent to do these unorthodox things, and just letting them go is just unrealistic when you're playing in tournaments. It will work, but I guarantee you 80% it will either get destroyed or negated if you're waiting for something like them having to attack one of your face-up monsters or attack any of your monsters.
Okay, that makes complete sense.
It's like Mirror Force. Why don't people play Mirror Force anymore?
People play Stormy Mirror Force. Some people actually do.
They do. They play it for the surprise factor, but why don't people play Mirror Force? It's one of those things. It's not flexible enough.
Right.
And we already have the spirits, and the spirits kind of create that unorthodox advantage play that we kind of can use. Like I really give it up for the deck being able to use cards like that to its ability, because those cards, like I said early in the video, they're very interesting because they're very unique. And Magical Hats is also the same thing. And I'm sorry that I was like saying like I'm going to be sarcastic, because it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm an old player, so I understand exactly what you're thinking, like the Magical Hats play, but it's not a reality in this meta right now.
Okay, copy that. And another person asked earlier is, right now we do not have a defined meta because there's no regionals or YCS reports to go off of, or any reports to go off with everything going around. So how do you feel...
Happy quarantine.
How do you feel about this deck being tiered? Like, would you say... I don't know, to stretch, but like you wouldn't say it's better than Eldic, but like where would you put it on a tier list? Like tier 2, Rogue?
I mean, what do you classify as tier 2 and like is tier 2 and Rogue like its own tier?
Extremely subjective. I think no, tier 2 is under tier 1, and then there's tier 3, and then there's Rogue.
Because I absolutely hate people that even classify the phrase tier 1.5 a thing. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Whole numbers to me, dude. It's either tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or Rogue. That's it. That's how I say it.
Okay, so tier 0 I would classify as decks that just are consistent no matter how you play it. You can hand a random 10-year-old and be like, I will teach you the rules, play this deck, and they could probably win a few games. That's what I classify tier 0 as.
OG strikers with everything at 3?
Yeah, like, I mean, you could read that card and be like, oh, this card does this, and now because I have 3 of these spell cards in my grave, it does extra things. I'm like, yes. That's tier 0 would be, like, strikers at its max. But I guess, like, to get to the point, Unchained, in my opinion, if I had to go whole numbers from tier 0, 1, 2, if I want to say pure, I would say it's tier 2, and the only reason I say that is because it does have like if you look at my new version of the deck, like the amount of meta cards that I had to put in there for it to sustain balance between other decks,
Hmm.
it's so heavy on that. Like it doesn't it the monsters and the traps are just an engine, but you're making Unchained Soul and the premise of the deck is literally make Unchained Soul and you have a trap card or a possible hand trap. You have two disruptions right there.
Right.
And the disruptions not only hurt their board, but they disrupt their combo.
Hmm.
Other
Right.
than that, there's a lot of decks right now, which the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh is that Yu-Gi-Oh you can kind of make anything. Um,
Right.
but for other meta decks like Cyber Dragons, what's good right now? Cyber Dragon. No, oh, I'm sorry. No,
Adamancipator.
no. I actually remembered. Okay, so we got Eldritch, Adamancipator, and we have Salamangreat, and then we have Shadal Invoked.
Right.
They're all they're all just consistent. They all have just your normal summon matters, you know, and it gets plays going. This deck is required to just kind of hope that you know what your opponent's playing and you react to that specifically. So I think this deck is a great contender. I think it literally, if we get another card like that just you know recovers, or maybe even just gives us like a +1, just kind of like Sarama but in like spell form, something a little more quick, or maybe like a broken trap card like Gravedigger, Trap Hole, something like
Oh my
that.
god, that card is broken, dude.
Oh, so I mean, I
Oh
will
my
I will
god.
tell you guys this: if you're playing Unchained still during Eternity Code, uh, pick up the new Gizmic. That will be our best friend.
Oh, the new Kismet card.
I'll give you guys that secret tip. I have been
Oh no,
playtesting with that card,
not that
and
one.
I've been talking about that card with other people that have been playing Unchained. That card actually is really nuts in this deck.
Can you
You're
remind the viewers what the new Unchained card does? I have an old version of YGO Pro, so I can't see it from here.
What do you mean the new Unchained?
I mean not Unchained, my bad. The new Gizmet card.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a lot. So hold on.
Yeah, no worries.
It's it's like Gizmic Inari.
And Nari. I'll see if it's in there. If not,
It
you
should
can.
be.
Oh, the grain storage fox.
Yeah, it's the Fox.
Oh, this one. Okay, so if a monster summon, you can special summon it from the hand, right?
If a monster is special summon from the deck,
From the deck. Okay.
which
Copy.
all the Unchains do.
Oh, you summon it for free.
Yes. And then, you target one face-up monster your opponent controls,
Hmm.
and then you special summon one monster from your hand or deck with the attack and defense the same, and with the same attribute as the target. We have 3 attributes, so it's not that hard. And then the special summon burn just kind of works with every kind of deck. The point is that it's a free extender for the deck.
Hmm.
That's really easy. It's really on point, and it's really one of those extra muscles that we need. And and, and honestly, I was playtesting, and we kind of just, it gives us that boost to keep actually being able to extend if we really wanted to. And you can special summon it during your opponent's turn, and you can technically defend from OTKs. I was really liking the outcome of this card. There's nothing huge because, like I said, the deck requires you to interact with how your opponent's playing. This is another card that's not really straightforward with, how successful you're going to get the secondary effect off.
Hmm.
But I can guarantee you one thing is that no matter if you draw this card in your hand, you're going to special summon it, and it's so easy. And the fact that people aren't really looking for this card in Eternity Code, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a $5 or $10 card, even though it's
It's
secret.
insane because I know like you're looking over the first effect, how it's a free extender, but like the only thing I'm zoning in on this card right now is the first sentence. Each time your opponent normals or special summons a monster, they take 300 damage. So in time, this card is really good as well.
Correct. And like I said, it gives us the power to extend. And our deck everything just special summons from the deck.
And Gary asks, what would you take out for this card, and how many copies of Inari would you play?
At least 2.
So at least two, but what would you take out? Or is that like not defined
Oh,
right now?
from like my original deck.
No, from this deck, this current deck,
Oh,
this current build.
from the newest. So okay, so the only thing I'm on this. So I'm really liking this build so far. I'm even really liking the super poly, but probably the super poly.
Oh,
And yeah, it's probably a super poly, and I might go back to one Phantasme because I draw them a lot, and I wasn't. Phantasme is like Phantasme is a weird card where our deck likes it because it kind of works the same way Inari is going to be working, but
right,
Inari is a little more flexible on the special summon.
right. It's easier to get a Nari off.
Yes, and Phantasme. I mean, also like I said, our hugest matchup, our problematic matchup was Altergeist. Inari just lets us extend so we can get into that BLS a little bit faster, and I really like that. Um, but actually, is BLS level 8 or level 7 or higher that you need
It's
to?
it's a level 7 or higher.
Okay, so it works. So yeah, it gets the BLS play a little bit more turbo. But going forward, my new deck, I'm going back and forth between the Super Poly because I play extravagances.
Hmm.
But I already play 40 cards. As you see, I cut it down to 40.
Hmm.
I could either bump it up back to 41 and put in the two Inaris, taking out the Super Poly and giving myself a little more room for the extra deck, or I can probably take out the Mind Control or both Phantasmes.
Right, because it feels like the Pot of Extravagance and the Super Poly may conflict with each other.
They do. I have two. I have two. I have two Venom Dragons in there for that cause because half my deck's dark anyways, and we have the new Predaplant now where you can just technically just make any of their guys dark. Like
Right.
the Predaplant monster is ridiculous.
It's broken, dude. It's
Like
so
I
good.
I I pulled this card out of my box. I mean, I got it from you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When I got the card from you, I'm just like this. This is just a free answer to like giant boards. Super Poly is such a good card for just giant boards this meta. Like most of the negating cards are dark.
Yeah.
And I mean your opponent can't respond. But like it, if I were to take out Super Poly and go back and forth, play the Inari, probably take out the Phantasmes. I'm gonna try Dark Ruler no more as well as a main deck to see how that fares. If I want to take out the Super Poly, but so far my ratios for the new deck have been working pretty well.
Hmm.
The only thing I'm on the fence about is the Phantasmes. The Phantasmes are a bittersweet.
Right.
It's a bittersweet hand trap. It's really good when it goes off. Like, don't get me wrong, this card puts so many people on tilt when it comes out,
Hmm.
but sometimes it literally will sit in your hands.
Right, because like you said, like same idea with magical hats. It is a reactive card. Like you
Yes.
have to wait until your opponent link summons for it to resolve properly or even activate. And sometimes in some cases, I've had people at my locals. This is the other locals I go to. They play around my Phantasme, and they don't link summon because they know I have Phantasme in the deck. And I don't know if that's like the right call, but like at that point in time, it was, and it's a brick in the hand, you know.
Yeah, and I mean the great thing about it is, like I said, Phantasme gives you that ability to OTK in this deck,
Hmm.
and the reason why I say that is because you can already pump out 6,000 damage with the Unchains alone with just two cards.
Yeah.
Um, this potentially makes it 84. So, and with that, it also fixes your hands if you're drawing the one or two ofs of your level eights. But it also it gives you that protection for when people are trying to kill your monsters. So, I mean, it's a generically good card. It extends. It gives you that BLS play that I like making so much because I think Altergeists are a headache.
Yeah. Same, dude.
But, it's one of those cards where it's like, how frequent are you going to use it in a meta that you're not sure about? It's very up in the air at this point.
Okay. Copy.
But I with this new version of the deck, I'm trying to cover all my bases.
Okay. Yugi Boy asks, what is your number one favorite thing about the Unchained archetype?
What's my favorite?
Yeah, is it the popping aspect?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I were to, I would give you the same answer I started with at the
Yeah,
beginning
right,
of the
right.
video. They're like scraps, and the artwork is gorgeous. Like, have you looked at them? Like, this is
Dude, like Unchained
I,
Soul looks amazing.
I'm not huge into the anime women scene as much as like other players are, but like I appreciate good artwork, and this is one of those decks, and the strategy is very unique. Take your opponent's cards, react to your opponent's plays. You're gonna destroy my stuff. All right, I'm coming back. Like it's a very interactive play style that I very much enjoy.
Okay. And we had another viewer ask, have you considered running Trap Trick in this deck?
Um, it could be a one of, but like if you just play three of each of the traps, like okay, so I play what, six? So you have Abomination's Prison, you have the Wailing, and then you have Chamber, and you have Escape.
Right.
Those are all, like, if you draw two of any of your prisons, you can go off. If you draw a prison, a Wailing, you can go off. If you draw any one of the trap cards, you can go off. Trap Trick, you got to wait a turn to get one of your, like, you can only get impermanence in
Ah,
two traps.
right.
So I'm not, like I said, I like the deck being able to go first and second.
Mm-hmm. Copy.
Like, and if you look at it, like, the only thing that requires setup going first is using my, let's say, Escape of the Unchained, its actual effect, or just trying to set up your Solar Rage. I'm not really getting any value out of just getting Trap Trick to get one of my trap cards that I still need to try to destroy somehow, which will probably, my answer to that would be normal summon Rakia and then Trap Trick and then trigger on quick effect. Destroy. I didn't really see any merit for it. Okay. But I like the idea because it thins out your deck. It gets you the trap that you want. But what does it do?
Right. It's not good for going second at all. Like, when you draw into it going second at your 6th card, it doesn't really help you at that point in time. When it could have been something else. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. It's like you want to see those traps, but at the same time, you want to see those traps now. Like, right. If I draw a Trap Trick and I have no traps or spells to blow up, I'm like, it's still not solving my problem.
Right.
It's not getting my engine going. It's not triggering my Rakia. Well, it is, but like, the best play I can make out of that is normal summon Rakia, Trap Trick during their turn, and then quick effect, destroy my trap, get Abominable Unchained, and then try to destroy their card. That's what I'm doing. That's all it does. Okay. It's the same way I look at just drawing any of the traps. It's like you draw the trap, and you can tutor out your monster from the deck. Trap Trick doesn't allow me to do that. It just allows me to set that up for next turn, and sometimes you don't even last until next turn. This is our Yu-Gi-Oh meta right now.
Yeah, it's 2020.
It's just like I said. You guys gotta realize what's too slow. It could be good in theory, but sometimes it doesn't match the speed.
Okay. And the last question we have for now is Zach Mayer asks, there's a couple of deck lists for Unchained out there with Dimensional Shifter. What are your thoughts on that card?
So people play Dimensional Shifter because it's a blowout card, and it doesn't affect our deck, but it absolutely does nothing for our deck, which is, I look at it the same way I look at No Material.
Okay.
Great hand trap in theory. Great. But don't tell me that as soon as you draw that, not turn one, that you're going to be able to find a play to do anything with that card.
Okay, so it's kind of like you feel like it would be better suited in let's say Thunder Dragons because they plus off of stuff getting
Even
banished.
even during Thunder Dragon, when Thunder Dragons were playable, people were still going back and forth with that card because they didn't know if it was good enough because they didn't want the brick. And
Right.
people people play it, like I said, is because it's a blowout card, and Unchains don't care where they go when they're destroyed, so they will always trigger, like as long as they're destroyed. But at the same time, it doesn't warrant being able to, you know, I guess floodgate a potential deck or potentially floodgate a deck to where you're gonna open with it. I mean, you're gonna play your match and it's gonna be completely useless mid game. Like our deck grinds and it goes to mid game. Do you really want to see your dimension shifter turn 2 or 3? It's not gonna do anything.
Right.
So, I mean, turn 2 technically because you haven't made a move, or maybe you didn't hand trap, but it's like we're gonna have cards in the grave by the end of our first turn being able to play, and
Right.
I don't want to take that risk. I'm already taking risks playing Extravagance, and I think it's barely acceptable, but it still works because I've done so much testing and I've been able to figure out, you know, what ratios are okay with my extra deck to play it, and then I can't. I get it in theory. I really do. It's a great card. It's one of the best best hand traps, but it's the fact that you can't have cards in your grave. It limits it so hard against a deck that can't really even synergize with it. Besides the fact that we don't care what happens to our field. I mean, not telling you guys not to play it, because at the end of the day, this is all through trial and error and my own choices. So I'm not going to tell you, you know, don't play it. I think there's better options.
Right. Okay. Copy that. And that is the last question we have for now. Shall we get to this deck list?
Sure.
Let's do it. All right. 3 Ash, obviously, right? This is pretty much all the same. The Unchained lineup, the 2 tour guides. You bunked this up to 2, Unchained Soul, and then Disaster at 1. I noticed. And also Dark Spirit to 2, Banishment.
I told you guys midway, it's like I bumped them up because I wanted to see more of them. I don't like Malice, and I thought 2 Banishment. 2 Banishment was a good call. I don't take it back. I love seeing Banishment. It always throws people for a loop. It's like a hand trap, battle trap. It gains us advantage. It's like it can 3 for 1. It's ridiculous. And then it just comes back. It's like you just want this card.
Right, it's so good.
And like some people do main called buys or DD Crows, and it gets removed. And hey, I have another one. All right.
Right.
Try again.
Can you even call by during damage step?
You can't.
Yeah, right, because it doesn't directly negate.
You can't call by. You can't hand trap any of it. It's going off.
Right. The only thing you could do is if you have like a, let's say like a
Solemn Strike, or something.
Or something to that effect. Something that negates monster effects directly.
They need to have like a trigger, some sort of trigger effect.
Right. Okay.
But there's nothing that really matches that speed right now that people play.
Yeah,
unless you already have onboard negate.
I have PTSD from this card.
It's great. I love it.
Legit, I was about to OTK you at locals. I remember at Equimax, like over 8,000 damage per game. And I was running over my own Gamma Seal that I sack your monster off of. And then you just drop Banishment. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I'm like,
are you kidding me? Because I had to read it. And it just says if your opponent's monster attacks. It doesn't care what it attacks. If I attack in general, you can have an open field. And if this card is in your hand, you're protected.
Yeah, like, if anything, guys, is like, if you want any, like, tech card that you should 100% play in this deck, Spirit of Banishment is the card to play.
It's so dumb, dude.
It gives you advantage. It disrupts their plays. It disrupts their thought process, and they really can't get around it. They have to remove it from the grave. and
Right.
you're always making your souls. So when you link with your souls, it just comes back.
Hmm.
So it's like it's just so free, and the synergy with it is just ridiculous. I love that card. I mean, Malice is the same, but this just it makes people scared, and that's what I love about it. It's the mental fortitude this card brings is ridiculous.
Right. It's insane. And one of our viewers asked, "No bump up on Sarama? Are you keeping that too?"
Sarama's weird because the thing I dislike about this deck is I never feel like I have enough monsters to summon, and I want to say three Saramas okay because it is,
Yeah.
but the fact that I barely want to summon it turn one
Hmm.
just means that I just two's gonna work. I'm gonna get it from the deck if I really want it,
Yeah.
and if I draw it, like that's great. Like it's gonna go off, but it's not gonna do anything turn one. And just for the sake of room, I kept it at two.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Let me see. Let me look through your whole main build. Everything else is still pretty much the same. Lightning Storm is just a good card, so we don't have to explain that.
Yeah, like,
too much.
guys, imagine
card, man.
Heavy Storm and Raigeki being on the same card. Like, just it's good. It's blowout. Like your opponent sets 2 or 3 cards, they're gonna get mad.
And plus, like, you tend to set your cards anyways, so Lightning Storm could still go through.
Yeah, like Lightning Storm goes off 90% of the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. Really good card. Let's see. Anything with extra deck that's funky? I don't notice. There's nothing too crazy in the extra deck.
I really tried to perfect it. The only thing, like I said, is if I decide to take Super Poly out, we're gonna have more room, and maybe what I would do with that is I would put in maybe, like I said, Break Sword back in, because honestly, like Break Sword was always a great card that just synergized well with the deck. And then for maybe the second card, I would probably just put in either another Anguish or another Link 2. There's nothing really generic that we can play, because the main problem with Unchained that some people do forget is that their effects do restrict you to summoning fiend monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I keep Cherubini in, even though it's not an impactful play, is the fact that he is a Link 2 that can be summoned regardless if you go through their stipulations for playing your whole deck out. So like even if I Aruha or Irakia, I can still proceed to make Cherubini if I really need another Link 2 for whatever reason that my souls aren't summonable. Same thing with Unicorn. Unicorn is just our type. It's our typing, and being able to have the soul play during your opponent's turn into Unicorn to make 2 disruptions never really happens, but it's such a good card. It's such a good idea in theory that I feel like it's mandatory. You want to have that option because it will come up.
Have you ever considered playing IP in this deck? How do you feel about that card?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, IP works with Zero Boros and Unchained.
Right.
Abomination. Like I said, it's. I guess if I took out the Super Poly, I could also replace the Verde with IP. IP is good. Like if you have room for IP, like play it. Like Zero Boros is a must in my opinion in this deck, and so is Abomination, and they can both be made with IP. An IP with Abomination literally is just like is really freaking annoying. Like
yes, absolutely. I agree.
People don't normally run over Abomination; they just get rid of it through card effect. So I mean, IPing with Abomination. I completely understand why people would play IP. So I mean, if you're not playing Super Poly in your deck, by the way, the recent deck that did top with Unchained did play 3 Super Polys. So I must be doing something right.
Yeah, you're 1/3 of the way there. You got 1 Super Poly.
Yeah, but of course I'm playing it. I'm rolling the dice with my extra deck, but
Hey man, if it works for you, it works.
It's been consistent. Like I said, guys, this has been through testing. But it could just be my play style. So who knows?
All right, so let's get through the side deck. Let me see. Anything too crazy? Lava Golem seems pretty standard because it's a fiend. Level 8 too.
And also, you can, if you lava golem and your lava golem's in your graveyard, you can always Spirit of Banishment it back to the field for that 3k. Its effects are negated, so it's not burning you either. So it's good
That's
synergy.
actually hilarious.
Yep. Just in case people didn't realize that.
Yeah. And then, let me see what else. It also has standard stats too. 3,000, 2,500 defense is relatively standard for stats. So if you're playing with a new Gizmet card, that might come in handy at some point. 2 Nibiru, standard, 3 call buys, 2 Cosmic, and I'm assuming that's for the Orcus matchup.
For Orcus, for Pendulum, it's I'm playing Lightning Storms now, so I already have the multi spell and trap destruction down.
Yeah.
And this is just in case you have that problem child of a spell and trap that gets triggered by effects by being in the grave, or they can just get it back from their grave. It's you throw this in because you want to solidify the fact that you're getting rid of problem spells and traps.
Mm-hmm.
And Mystical Space Typhoon is still a good call, guys. Like if you want to play Mystical Space Typhoon, the great thing about that is that worst case scenario, you can trigger your own traps during your opponent's turn, and it's synergetic. But like I said, this is more just getting rid of the actual problem. So evenly matched and Cosmic Cyclone are just they just, you're not seeing the card again if you get rid of it. So right. I really enjoy that.
And the last card we're talking about is Summon Limit. So have you ever thought about playing Dimensional Barrier?
Nope. I think this card is one of the best side deck cards in our deck, because for a while I went back and forth from maining this card, because we do not need to summon more than 2 times. It does not hurt our deck in any real way, unless like you're in the situation where it's like, damn, I could have won if I just didn't have summon limit for more damage, and that's the only scenario. This card probably stops 90% of decks right now, besides trap heavy decks. 90%.
Right.
And we take full advantage of that. So not only do you summon limit their plays midway combo, but then you just you eat their monster with your rage, and just you completely stop their play. And it's such a wonderful synergetic card. And the only reason why you side it is because not every deck is a combo deck.
Right, because some decks just play, control. And
yeah, and honestly, like that. So summon limit and Imperial Order, going back and forth between side and main. The only reason I decided to take out Imperial Order is because I really didn't feel like I had any room, and Sky Striker isn't really being played right now, and that was really the only like huge spell like orchestrated deck.
Right.
So Imperial Order would work just fine in this deck as well, and it's really a blowout card, but I'm not seeing how useful it is as of this format, so I decided to get rid of it.
Okay. I remember I evenly matched you at locals. Like, I think it was like game 3 or something. You had 3 set, and you had the blue guy on the field. Or something to the effect. The blue or the red guy, I don't remember. And then you kept that one back row, and I was like, what is that back row? And then I summoned my Crusadia monster, go into Link 1, and you just flip summon limit. I just felt really bad.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, the deck is based on knowing your matchups. So like I knew you were playing Crusadia, and I'm like, it doesn't matter if I lose my field. This card's gonna stop you from playing the game.
Like period. That's it. It's over.
That was my goal. I'll recover later. You're just gonna stop, and that's what the card does. The card not only takes advantage of stopping the combo decks, but we take advantage of you just disrupting your monsters even coming out in the first place. So summon limit, taking your monsters, like it almost leaves you with no options.
Yes, absolutely.
And worst case scenario, we can just blow it up ourselves. Like mess around with floodgates, guys, because we can blow shit up for free.
Yeah, that's what makes the deck so flexible because you're not locked into anything. I don't
Correct.
believe this deck locks you into anything. So, which segues neatly into one of another viewer's questions. Any thoughts on a rank 8 exceed, or is that just too inconsistent to summon?
It doesn't happen. I rather use my souls. I rather use my souls to go into the links, or just like I said, make the BLS play. It's just it. I mean, you know, eights are good. Eights put on negates, and I didn't mean to rhyme, but it's true. It's
Yeah, I'm throwing
you know
bars here.
you have a lot of eights that just negate. What is it? The Harbinger Dragon, stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
Lancelot, you they have a lot of negate rank eights, but like
Mm-hmm.
I'm already playing like I said, I'm playing Extravagance. You know, it would be a one of if anything, and it's
Mm-hmm.
probably the likelihood of me playing it means I'm already trying to like go into a strategy that the deck's already not set up for.
Yeah.
So it could work, it could come out like
Mm-hmm.
very rarely, but I don't see it being consistent enough to warrant putting it in, well, having space to put it in.
Okay. Copy that. We are running relatively short on time. Is there any last things you want to say to the viewers before I do the
Um,
outro?
yeah, I mean, thanks guys for letting me ramble about my deck. I I didn't know I would have to talk and speak about this deck over and over and over again, but I'm always glad that I can help people out and to understand, because Yu-Gi-Oh, funny enough, can it's more about how you make the deck. It's like a lot of people like to jump on decks that continuously top, but if you look at current formats, you see a lot of mix because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much utility that we can use now, that the way I look at it is, if you have the correct information and you know what to expect, you can make really anything powerful if you just you know what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and you put the practice in, and you work, and you're very constructive about your deck. Like, I take criticism all the time. I have people saying, my deck's stupid, my deck's, your deck just sits there and floats. And like, I remember at a regional, and this was Connecticut. Like, the last opponent I played, he was playing Mech Knight Invoked, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew what the deck did, and I'm just like, all right, so I'm just gonna I think I summon limited him, and then I slowly started absorbing his monsters, and then he started killing everything, and then I started getting the cards back. He's like, oh, all your deck does is just sit there and flow. This is so stupid. Why don't people play normal decks? And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, you're playing Mech Knight Invoked.
Like,
That's not a normal deck.
what is a
Like,
normal deck? What is defined normal? I think he just wanted to play against meta because he understands the meta, but not like.
correct. It's like, because you make meta calls, because that's the meta is the term of the 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 play style that controls a format. So when something's meta, it's something that is highly seen and played.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you're going into a tournament. You go to a tournament to win. You're gonna make these choices to play meta, but you're not always gonna see it. Which is why you need to play a lot. Which is why going to locals, playing online, is where you can't get mad because you lost to some rogue, because everybody loses to rogue. This is potentially rogue.
Yeah.
Let's it's something that you need to, but like, this deck wouldn't be the way it is if I didn't know how other decks worked. I can't just be like, oh, I don't like playing this deck because I don't like sitting there for 15 minutes. I need to know what they're doing for 15 minutes to make this deck
Right.
work. So even if they're sitting there for 15 minutes, I need to know why this is happening, or I need to know what to stop within that 15-minute combo. And this is where a lot of practice and revising comes into play. I think this deck is a great contender,
Mm-hmm.
but decks like that are really consistent right now are going to be Eldritch and Adamantivator,
Oh my
because
god.
people are playing that up the butt right now. And Shadal Invoked is still huge. Those are the three most consistent decks that I see being played alongside Salamangreat and Pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
And then I still think Altergeist is fine. Like I haven't seen anyone play it, but like the deck didn't get touched.
No, not at all.
And now we get Gravedigger Trap Hole. I'm just like, oof. That card's gonna be a blowout. Just forewarning everyone. Like that card's
Dude, that trap hole card is so strong. I read it and I have to do like a triple take. I'm like, it's a trap hole card, so you can search it with trap tricks.
And we're gonna have a new hand trap, guys. Like, you know, expect changes. But
a lot of people are like, you know, like taking a dunk on the hand traps because they think the new hand trap's not that good. I think it's pretty good. How do you feel?
It's another better. It's another better effect veiler. Like, I think of it as slightly better than effect veiler, slightly worse than impermanence. So
it's the happy medium that also burns.
Yeah, it's that 4 for 4, but you know, there's going to be a lot of the thing is there's going to be a lot of good cards coming out in this next pack. So there's going to be a lot of room for revision. But for any advice for Unchained players, pick up the Gizmic, because the Gizmic is probably going to be a very influential card for this deck coming ETCO. So I really like that card in theory, even though it might not work for everyone. I really like it, and I've really been seeing I've been really seeing, you know, a lot of success with this card. Another card that I should tell people to kind of, you know, try around is Smoke Grenade of the Thief.
Oh my god, that card.
So I've been playing I got this card as soon as this deck came out, and I never really put it into perspective because as soon as it took forever for me to get the card in the mail. It was like a 30-cent card, but since it was 30 cents, like I didn't get it for like 3 weeks, so I kind of forgot about it. I've been playing this online, and guys, it's if you equip this card, it's like it's turn 1 to turn 2 confiscation. That's ridiculous.
Right, because you just pop your own card. Look at their hand. And
like you Rakia during their turn, or you Aruha during your turn, and then you're starting with confiscation. And if I can tell you, with any old Yu-Gi-Oh player, confiscation's banned for a reason. That
card is broken, dude.
The nuttiest card. So if I had to give you guys any spicy tech options, it would definitely be that card. Another card is, well, I mean, everybody knows this, but you guys can try Pot of Avarice. I've been really liking like that card back and forth because it's at 3 now, and I always thought that card should be at 3. Like, considering how like decks now, because everything's so graveyard oriented, but we use up our whole hands. So Pot of Avarice is kind of a dead card going first. So whatever, let's have it at 3. Like, it's I don't see any deck trying to play 3 besides Zodiac. So you know, it is what it is. But Pot of Avarice shows to be kind of a good card to use for you know, if I had to replace cards, you don't need to play Lightning Storm. Like I said, Evenly Matched was a good card, but I feel like we do need some cards for prepping to go second. Mind Control's a really good card. I'm kind of sad they hit it, but I understand why they did, because that card is amazing. That card is close to Change of Heart, and I I just actually started maining this card, and I've been really liking the results. I used to side it, but now I main it. And sometimes when you just go second and you start with this card, it forces their negate so hard. It's
so good too when you
get you that leeway.
Appaloosa. Oh my god.
Oh yeah. Oh, Appaloosa is getting made all over the place. Mind Control is like auto win.
So free. So, anyways, one last question before we yeet out of here.
Go for it. My voice is still here. slowly getting worse.
Is asking, ever think about siding or maining a Winda just for the Super Poly target, because Shaddoll Invoke is such a prevalent deck?
You could. I mean, I just threw the Adagnister in there because I was playing Duplex Chimera for potential Adagnister and Salamangreat / Cyberse variant decks like Mathmech. If Shaddoll remains popular, absolutely.
Yep.
I just put in the targets that I thought were gonna pop up the most.
Yeah.
But I absolutely am okay with Winda being one of your options for going in for Super Poly because it makes sense. Like we can play with Winda, we can play around Winda, and that's a great thing. Like Shadal Invoke doesn't hurt us that much. Like we don't. I'm telling you guys, we don't need to always go into the extra deck, and that just makes them have to extend. And Shadals don't like doing that because they're expecting you to have an extra deck card on board to just Shadal fusion and get their advantage. And when you can't do that, they literally lose all resources. And Winda doesn't really do much against us. What are they going to do? Attack into our monster, special summon any of our big souls from the deck, and we solve the Winda problem. Like that deck isn't really a huge issue for us as of now. So like even having that as a super poly target, we already are kind of at an advantage. I mean, unless they have all the answers with Makaba, then I just don't see it as a huge threat. Like I said, our biggest threats are going to be more control style decks or trap heavy variants. But yes, include Winda if you have the room, like as a super poly target. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I just like I said, I put in the most consistent targets that I thought I would see.
Okay. And instant fusion.
What about it?
So one guy asks, he knows you play extravagance, but do you think even with the one of instant fusion, would you play that card?
Just
Yeah.
for Winda?
No, not for just window, but like I don't know, for Millenniumize. I don't know what you grab with that nowadays.
I mean, I don't even play Call by the Grave because I don't think hand traps hurt us too much.
Yeah.
It can, but it's not super relevant. Millenniumize. I mean, they're good cards, but it's at 1, and we don't need too many extenders. We just need to make sure that we have the key cards we need to set up our making soul of rage and just setting up so we have that disruption ready for when they start making their plays or to counteract their plays. And yeah, Thousand Eyes can work, but yeah, just like I mean, we play mind control. So I mean, if you like I said, if you have the room, like instant fusion is also it could be a mind control, but I play extravagance, and I think that's like he said at the I'm sorry, Tom said at the beginning, it's just I play extravagance. I wouldn't risk it because that means if I play Winda or I play each Thousand Eyes, then that's more room that I potentially won't be able to have. And unfortunately, I do need to make links more than I need to make fusions. So the possibility is there, but I don't see myself making room for it, and I don't find that like I said, I don't see the synergy with the deck as much as others because our main problem is that we need to get our souls from the deck to the field ASAP.
Right.
To go into our biggest threat. Or we need to have the trap cards to get our biggest threat. And yeah, the mind control helps because it's just a 2-for-1. We take their monster, we make a monster. But it's more linear and it takes up less space. So I personally wouldn't use instant fusion because I am playing mind control. But if I had the room and I wasn't playing extravagance, of course it's a great option. Like instant fusion is limited for a reason, and I know it's not because it's technically like broken, but it's it's gonna get more ridiculous as the game improves. And for my build personally, I don't see myself maining it because I don't have the room and I don't find it necessary.
Okay, copy that. And we are 2 hours in, and unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this podcast. I'd like to give a shout out to.
I mean, if anyone watches this, like,
y'all troopers, we have like 8, 9 people in the chat.
You're true Unchained players if you can actually watch this not live and sit through the whole entire thing because I rambled. I'm sorry.
No, that's completely okay. Like I know all of these people in the chat are very interested about your deck, and like it's actually really nice to see a deck that's topping, or that was topping, that's not Shadal invoked or some variant of Sky Striker or whatever was good at that time. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, anyways, hope you all enjoyed the podcast. Again, thank you again, Patrick, for joining us.
Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate the offer, and I'm glad I could explain and ask any questions. Like I said, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna lie when it comes to is the deck like the best deck to play? Is it the deck to play? Maybe, maybe not. It's like I said, it's this deck is completely up to personal preference right now because
Yep.
we do have a solid engine, but the deck doesn't really combo. So it's kind of how you make it. It's how you think the meta is going to go. It's probably going to change over and over and over again.
Right.
But until we get like maybe a few more support cards that are really good, the deck's up in the air with how you build it. Like we don't really have a card that maintains advantage. We're strictly reactive. So, you can play Pot of Desires. You can play Pot of Extravagance.
Mm-hmm.
You could play the Trade-in Engine. You could play many different types. It's just you gotta play with what you know, and you gotta keep trying. You gotta keep testing, give that trial and error, and you gotta you know maybe join a forum or a Discord and get other people's ideas and try them out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just use the information you have and you just keep trying your best and don't be those rage quitters that quit after a bad hand. It's just like you learn from losing, and a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players just don't get that. It's like
Right. You
you
learn
know
more from losing a game than winning.
like you a lot of people complain and they're just like, oh no, I just lost because I played against this deck. I'm like, well, you're gonna keep playing against that deck, so why are you complaining about it? Like, adapt your deck if you really want the deck to exceed, adapt to it. And this deck does have the creep to maintain that balance. It's not some old 2010 15 deck that's just not going to see the light of day for support, or just it didn't age well. It's a deck that's been created and still getting support today. So it kind of meshes with the format already. You have to work around it, and you have to not be scared to try new things. But no, I had a great time, and thank you for having me. I hope I could give you guys thorough enough answers despite all the rambling.
Of course. And so, what's gonna happen in the future with this build is Patrick has already sent me some replays. I'm gonna go through that at a future point, and that'll be uploaded as a separate video, and he can just walk through his decision making there. If any of you want to see his viewpoint and how he sees the duel and like why he's making the choices he's making. But in the meantime, before that is uploaded, Patrick has already made appearances on this channel. There are two duels or two whole matches up. One where he played against a Dark World deck, and another where I believe he played against a Cubic deck. So if you want to watch a little bit just to see or get a sense of how he thinks when he plays, that could also help as well. If you want to learn.
Just a warning: if you guys watch the Cubic one, I rage quite a bit because I have no idea what they do. But
Yeah, like
after game one, I kind of realized I'm like, oh, you want me to kill everything, so I'm just not. And then I understood it, and I just was able to, like I said, it's the ability to adapt with that deck, and then you can actually see a lot of success.
yeah, you gotta watch out for him too, because a lot of people in the comments are bashing on the Cubic player for making a lot of they're not misplays, but not reading the cards correctly. So you gotta keep an eye out for that too.
It's okay. Hate is gonna hate.
It's all right. Anyways, I'm a Kevin TCG. That was Patrick Clarey with his top Unchained deck. I hope to continue seeing him improve in the future. He's been playing Yu-Gi-Oh forever, since I kind of started playing when I was 12 or 13. He's been going to my local since then, so it's been over a decade, probably even more at this point. So.
Yep. You can't lie about that.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm a Kevin TCG. That was Patrick Clarey. If you liked it, make sure you like or dislike, whatever. If you didn't like it, comment and subscribe. And don't forget, guys, it's time to duel.